The third installment of the Spider-Man movies in the MCU is promising to bring back some characters from some previous continuities. But based on what happened in Spider-Man Far From Home, I think the villain should be Kraven the Hunter and Silver Sable. Allow me to explain why. Welcome back to Comic Power. I'm your host, Comic Killer 72. And welcome to the first episode of the Hollywood Treatment. It's an original story that I wrote about an upcoming movie. And today, that's Spider-Man 3. Please subscribe to this channel and also click on the notification bell as well. It will remind you when new videos come out. Let's do it. Marvel has some very different plans on how Spider-Man 3 should go down. But just for fun, I'm going to go over in this video what I think they should do for Spider-Man 3. So jump on the Comic Power bus as I take you for a ride. And we're going to pick up directly from what happened at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, where Mysterio framed Peter and revealed his secret identity. J.K. Simmons reprised his role as J Jonah Jameson, and he shared this scoop on his web show, The Daily Bugle, which will make Peter a fugitive of justice. So based on those facts, 3 things should happen in Spider-Man 3. Number 1, Peter is going to need a good lawyer. Number 2, Jonah is going to keep hounding Peter. And number 3, bounty hunters are going to come into the mix. All right, let's start with part 1 about Peter needing a good lawyer. There so happens to be a good one right there in New York named Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. Comicbook.com has already confirmed that Charlie Cox, who played the character on the Netflix show, has been seen on the set of Spider-Man 3. So the Netflix shows were part of the MCU, but they had a loose connection. This is going to be a direct connection now, but I don't expect to see Matt suit up, but it will be a nod to the fans that the Defenders will make an appearance in the MCU going forward. So Daredevil, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, the Kingpin, expect to see them in the future, and that's a good thing. But for now, Peter Parker is in big legal trouble, and Matt Murdock can best help him as his lawyer. That brings us to number 2 about Jonah continuously hounding Peter Parker. This character made his first appearance in comics back in 1963 in Amazing Spider-Man number 1, and his whole mission in life is to try to take down Spider-Man. He's also a self-serving, attention-seeking hype machine with narcissistic tendencies. And it would make sense that he would offer a huge reward for the capture and the arrest of the fugitive that is Spider-Man. That brings us to number 3, which is if you're going to have huge numbers like that out there, then bounty hunters are going to come out of the woodwork out there to collect this huge reward. So guess who's going to show up? That's right, Kraven the Hunter. This character made his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 15 back in 1964. And as you can see, he was hunting Spider-Man from the beginning. He's probably the most popular Spider-Man villain who has not appeared in live action yet. He's a Russian tracker, big game hunter, and bounty hunter, and he wouldn't mind taking the $50 million for something he already loves to do. He's also a founding member of the Sinister Six. This is a group of supervillains who couldn't take down Spider-Man by themselves, so they team up to try to take him down together. Sony has been trying to get a Sinister Six movie off the ground for a very long time, so this is a good opportunity to put one of the founding members in the Spider-Man universe in live action now. My movie would show Kraven in action, catching his latest victim in Eastern Europe. He turns in his prey to his contractor, but it isn't really that much money, and he's upset at how little money it is. But then he hears about Spider-Man being wanted in America, and he says, $50 million for the biggest of game? Yeah, I'm coming to America. That brings us to Silver Sable. She's a bounty hunter and mercenary. She made her first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 265 back in 1985. She's not as famous as Kraven, but she's appeared in media such as the Spider-Man PS4 game looking like this. Or you may remember her in animated form looking like this. In the comics, the character is also the monarch of a small fictional Eastern European country named Simcaria, and it borders another fictional country named Latveria, which is ruled by a guy named Victor Von Doom. Yep, that guy. So in Spider-Man 3, she could mention him by name in one line of dialogue, and it would be our first Easter egg that Dr. Doom exists in the MCU. And if I were calling the shots, then I would call Spider-Man 3 Spider-Man Homeless, because he can't go home because he's a fugitive. But that title may come off as offensive, so the best one is Spider-Man Home Run. Due to his circumstances, he has to run and he can't go home. As for Sable and her motivation, her home country of Simcaria is going through a huge economic drought. So she has a meeting with her top lieutenants, and they hear about the Spider-Man bounty, and she decides the $50 million, she'll collect it and she'll spread it amongst her people. It would make her the most beloved monarch in the history of their country, and it would put Simcaria on the world map. And she has a special weapon that she got on the black market. But back to Peter Parker, the fugitive on the run. He goes to Happy Hogan for help, who is now the CEO of Stark Industries. He can't let Peter stay there because he can't harbor a fugitive, but he does give Peter the name of a good lawyer, which is Matt Murdock. Peter can't speak with Aunt May or Michelle or Ned because all their communications are tapped by the authorities. Peter briefly meets with Matt Murdock in his office, wearing a disguise of a hoodie, some sunglasses, and a fake mustache for comedic effect. Matt explains that he's sensitive to the needs of the superhero community and gives him some legal advice on what he should do. The authorities do show up, but Peter is already gone, but they can't get anything out of Matt because he invokes attorney-client privilege. So Spider-Man is still on the run, and he's got a big bounty on him. And the first bounty hunter to show up is the Kangaroo. This character made his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 81 back in 1970, apparently when Stan Lee couldn't think of any more ideas. In my movie, we wouldn't give him any backstory. He would just kind of just show up. He's a real joke of a character, and that's the whole point of this scene. He does have super strength and quickness, but he's no match for Spider-Man. He can't land a hand on him. Spider-Man restrains him in a web, and then they engage in some funny banter. And Peter says, "Dude, who are you?" And the bounty hunter says with a thick Australian accent, "Well, I'm the Kangaroo." And Peter says, "Dude, you named yourself after a marsupial from Australia that hops around?" And the Kangaroo quips back, "Well, you named yourself after an insect." And Peter says, "I named myself after an arachnid. What are you talking about?" And the Kangaroo says, "I'm not from Iraq, I'm from Australia." And then Peter says, "Man, you're an idiot." And then swings off and leaves him there tied up in the web. And as Peter makes his exit, the Kangaroo yells at him, "Hey, you just gonna leave me here? I have to take a whiz." As I stated before, this is a completely ridiculous character. This character was reinvented as the first villain that Miles Morales took on when he first was introduced in Ultimate Fallout number 4 in 2011, looking like Crocodile Dundee on steroids. And now back to Aunt May, and the police go to visit her, who is stressed out and visibly upset, and yells at the police that this is the third time they came to visit her. The other two were off camera. And she's like, "I don't know where Peter is at, but things have escalated." And they respond by saying they're not here to ask any questions, they're there to arrest her. And she says, "On what charges?" And they say for harboring a fugitive in violation of the Sokovia Accords. This harkens back to Captain America's Civil War in 2016, the Superhero Registration Act, which has not been enforced since Thanos showed up the first time. It had wiped out half of the life in the universe in 2018. The authorities want to use Aunt May as a pawn to try to force Spider-Man from coming out of hiding. It's a domino effect that starts with J Jonah Jameson strumming up fear about Spider-Man to the whole city, which is making the mayor have pressure from those citizens who are scared, and therefore he's putting pressure on the DA to come up with these trumped up charges against Aunt May to try to flush out Spider-Man. So they throw her in handcuffs and put her in the paddy wagon and take her down to the station and try to interrogate her and state that they're going to get her 5 years in prison if she doesn't give up Spider-Man. And she keeps saying, "I don't know where he's at, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you." And she says, "I'm not saying anything else without a lawyer." So they send in a court-appointed lawyer who is sweating and nervous and fumbling and has no idea what he's talking about. And he tries to get May to take a plea bargain to a lesser charge, and she's not having it. And guess who walks in? Matt Murdock and his law partner, Foggy Nelson. And they say, "We'll take it from here." Matt explains to May that they're here to represent Peter and her in this situation. They arrange a meeting with the DA, and once they explain that they were sent there by Stark Industries, all charges are dropped immediately. And now back to our bounty hunters. Sable arrives in America and tracks down Peter, and she battles Spider-Man and actually gets the upper hand and captures him using vibranium tech that she got from a guy named Ulysses Claw before he was killed. And of course, Kraven shows up and battles Silver Sable and takes her prize of Spider-Man away from her. She's just no match for Kraven, and the weapon that she used on Spider-Man was a one-time use restraint, so she can't use it again. Kraven makes some despicable sexist comments as he defeats Sable pretty easy. Kraven laughs and says, "I thought this would be hard, but a mere woman to stop me, and Spider-Man's already trapped," and leaves with his bounty. And a few moments later, Sable gets up, wipes the blood off her nose, and says, "I'll be back for you, you SOB. Kraven contacts Jonah and lets him know that he has Spider-Man, but they have a disagreement because Jonah tries to lowball him on the $50 million and only offer him half of that. Silver Sable tracks down where Kraven is keeping Spider-Man to try to break him out and retake him. After a brief skirmish, Peter is able to convince her that he's innocent and they should team up to fight against Kraven, which they do. Sable takes on Kraven's goons, and Peter is matched up with Kraven himself. Kraven gets some real good licks in on Peter. Kraven is very fast and very agile, and Peter's webbing does nothing against him. He breaks right through it. And we get some exposition from Kraven that he took a variation of the super soldier serum, which has been floating around on the black market in Eastern Europe, with plans that had been stolen from Hydra. So Kraven is slightly stronger than Captain America, but Spider-Man rallies and he wins against Kraven. And of course, the authorities show up to try to take in Peter and everyone involved, but Nick Fury has returned from the sword station and overrules the authorities. He clears Peter Parker of any wrongdoing. He takes Kraven the Hunter into custody, and he offers a job to Silver Sable, which she declines. Now cleared of all charges, Peter is able to return home to his friends and family and gives Michelle the biggest, wettest kiss you ever saw. And despite of being cleared of all charges, Jonah is still saying that he's guilty of dangerous vigilante that needs to be brought to justice and just won't let it go. The end, and the credits roll. But wait, that's not all. This is a Marvel movie, so you know there'll be after credit scene. And we visit Michael Keaton's Vulture and the Scorpion, who are still in prison, but they've been working on a plan for years to escape. And they finally do and go on the run. And the Vulture says to the Scorpion, "I got a stash that the cops never found." On the second end credit scene, we visit Justin Hammer, and his company has hit an economic plunge. He's having a meeting with his accountants, and they're telling him this, and he doesn't like the news. He kicks them out of his office, he ponders for a second, and then he goes down to R&D and speaks to his top scientist and says, "How is the project coming?" And the scientist says, "It's going very well, sir." And Justin Hammer says, "Thank you, Dr. Octavius." And then the camera pans over to the prototype of the octopus arms. And in a third after credit scene, a man is sitting in his house and we can't see his face. He has Chinese food delivered, and then he sits in front of his computer, and on the screen it says Spider-Man has been cleared of wrongdoing. And then we see the man's face. It's Jake Gyllenhaal. Mysterio is still alive. He sees the news about Spider-Man and lets out a cuss word. Fade to black. So that's my original story on what I think the plot should be for Spider-Man 3. The Matt Murdock cameo gives you a direct connection between the Netflix shows and the MCU. You get Kraven the Hunter set up for a future Sinister Six movie. You get Silver Sable, a potential spin-off movie. You get the first Easter egg of Doctor Doom. So please go to the comment section and let me know what you think of my original story. And Marvel, by the way, I am available if you need another writer. But let's look at the story that Marvel is actually going to tell based on what we know at the time I make this video. They're going to dip into the multiverse plan in which Doctor Strange is going to be in this film, and they're going to try to mash up 3 different continuities because they're going to bring back the original Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man 2, and they're going to bring back Jamie Foxx's Electro from the Amazing Spider-Man 2. And it's rumored that they may actually bring back Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, the other 2 original Spider-Man. And I get it, with the success of Into the Spider-Verse, movie studios are not afraid anymore of doing these weird type of things with superhero movies anymore, thinking it might lose the audience. But I think the format of animation allows you to do something that strange with Spider-Man and still work. But in live action, I think he's a more grounded street level superhero, and all the multiverse stuff just gets too weird for this franchise. So what would you rather have, the Comic Power Bounty Hunter plot or the Marvel official multiverse plot? Go to the comment section and let me know, and sound off on which idea you like the best. You know the drill. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, give the thumbs up, and share these videos on social media so other people learn about the channel. And don't forget, I do sell comics at my eBay page listed here with a link in the description. One Stop Thrift and Comic Power are run by the same guy. That would be me, Comic Killer 72. I have 100% feedback, by the way. And once again, thank you to my subscribers and viewers who support Comic Power. Until next time, this is Comic Killer 72 for Comic Power saying bye-bye.